2 weeks into the college basketball season. Welcome all into the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I'm Zach Farmer. That's Thomas Dunn. And we've got a lot to get into. We've got some really hot teams coming in. A number of teams still in the WCC undefeated. St. Mary's, Gonzaga, LMU, Santa Clara among them. A couple teams who are not playing so hot as well. We'll get into that a bit. To let everybody know, we will be joined by Santa Clara's Christian Hammond, who had a big night the other night, career high 27 against Nevada. So we'll talk to him a bit about what Santa Clara's season has felt like so far, what is going right for the Broncos, because a lot is going right for this Santa Clara squad as of right now. We'll get into some of the games of the week as well. Before we get into anything else, do want to remind everybody to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and then also on Spotify, wherever you are listening to the podcast. Follow along on social media at unofficial WCC pod. But right now we got to go into a little bit of our overreactions. It is Overreaction Monday for week after week 2 of the college basketball season. And Thomas, what's something that we saw in the last week that really kind of jumped out at you?
So I'm going to do one like non quote unquote basketball related thing and one very much basketball related thing. One, I'm starting with the first team all vibes in the conference, LMU. All right. I get the fact that their schedule is their schedule as it stands right now, but I absolutely every single day I will take more videos of Stan Johnson dancing in that locker room, because we talked about it at media day with them. LMU, like, you could feel the energy around the program, the way they were like with each other, the chemistry and the camaraderie they were building. And then it's another thing to see how that takes place on the court. And I've liked what I've seen in that department. 5-0 record for the Lions is nothing to scoff at. And I think we'll give them their keep and give them their credit. And it's cool to see that kind of that fun take shape on the court, especially in the off the court aspects, especially in that locker room. Basketball wise, Graham Ike, best 3-point shooter in the league, perhaps. You never know. I mean, that adds a really different dynamic, I think, because we already knew Braden Huff could do that from the Zags in terms of the way their perimeter forwards can be. But if Graham Ike, he kind of like took like token threes last year, like he'd take like one or two and, keep you honest, so to speak. But now he's like legitimately taking these threes, and teams have not necessarily adjusted to that yet, and he's making them pay. So that's a good development for him, a good development for the Zags. It does make things harder for opposing defenses to try and cover, because you can't just kind of pack the paint. We mentioned that as potentially a pinpoint and a struggle point in terms of the guards, but really the forwards are kind of alleviating, at least for now, some of that pressure.
Yeah, I mean, bring it back to LMU. Like, again, I agree. All vibes team. Stan Johnson might be the best dancer of any coach in college basketball. Maybe there's something to be done about that at the NCAA tournament or wherever else. But LMU is, I mean, again, we talked about the schedule a little bit, and it's not the best, but they're hovering at 109 in Ken Pom right now to continue to climb as we're going. Their biggest test is probably of the non-conference so far is going to be tonight at Santa Barbara, Aiden Mahaney's Gauchos over there. And so that is going to be a big test, as Santa Barbara is another one of those teams that's really starting to kind of pick up some steam. They're 3-0 heading into this one, or I think they're 4-0 heading into this one. So LMU Santa Barbara, a big test. I know that we throw out our power rankings and LMU did leapfrog USF, and that got some people talking, everything else. But they're handling their business. And that's not necessarily like the one thing I'm kind of looking at. To me, what the overreaction, if anything, is that Santa Clara didn't have the letdown after Xavier. There's always that concern about that. You have the big win and you're feeling good, you're riding high, and then there's that letdown. We've seen it happen a number of times to Santa Clara over the years. And so the Nevada game on Saturday felt not quite a trap game, because that's a good Nevada team. You're not going to overlook the Wolfpack, but it was one of those coming off a massive win. Again, remember, like, for those who did not watch, Santa Clara was up by 30 at one point at Xavier, and they just were in cruise control that second half, complete dominance. And then we saw almost the exact same thing on Saturday against Nevada. They really did not miss a beat. Christian Hammond, who will be on the show later, he has had really good performances in both of those games. He had the 20 points in the first half against Nevada, 27 overall. He had a really big first half against Xavier as well. He's starting to pick it up coming off his redshirt season. I think maybe his emergence is maybe my biggest takeaway of the week, because I don't think we kind of knew what we were going to see from the Santa Clara squad, and his name wasn't exactly one we talked about a whole lot going in, but he has very quickly made himself someone we have to talk about and address throughout the course of the non-conference.
Yeah, Christian Hammond kind of flew under the radar when you kind of break down the Santa Clara roster, and I kind of want to dial it back. And we're going to talk about this when we interview him later on in the show. Is this timeline kind of starts all the way back his freshman year and kind of the good run he had to end it, and that includes the WCC tournament game against St. Mary's. He was one of the few guys who was really unafraid of what the moment was asking. He was very poised, and one of the few double-digit scores the Broncos had in that game. And then you turn that around and you say, okay, now then he redshirts last year, and you're like, okay, why is that the case? And now you see how that timeline is playing out, the guards he sat behind, the people who he's learned from. And now it's clearly paying dividends right now for a Broncos team that I think for now doesn't necessarily have an alpha dog score, but they don't necessarily need one. I think everyone has kind of put that burden, quote unquote, on Elijah Mahi. And I think that's still a very fair and founded statement. But I just think in general, there are lots of unselfish guys on this Santa Clara roster this year. Christian Hammond obviously one a chief among some of them. And Broncos are doing a great job, especially along that front, and in term, especially the team physicality. That's one thing I've noticed that Santa Clara has embraced, I would say, more so than in years past. And at least for now, you're not going to walk in, kind of beat them up in the post, and then just see what happens from there. I think Santa Clara is rightfully going to punch back, and sometimes they're going to sustain that punch going the other way.
The other, so I want to not have a smooth transition about this at all. But the other point I wanted to talk about, the other overreaction thing, is Gonzaga's defense, because this is a team that I think that was one of the biggest question marks over the last couple of years, is how good they were defensively. And the overreaction is this is the best defensive team that they have had since their title run in their title game run in 2017. This is the best defense that they have had in nearly a decade. You look at what they've been able to do so far. You look at the addition of Tyon Graham-Foster and the chaos he creates. You look at what Jalen Worley has been able to do early on. You look at just a lot of it isn't even just individual pieces. It's how collectively as a team they've been able to play defense against some good teams, against Oklahoma, against Creighton, against Arizona State. None of them have shot above 40%. They're holding teams to 34% for the season. They're forcing 15 turnovers a game. They are almost plus 15 in the rebounding column. They are just punishing these teams so far in the non-conference. Again, good teams who have played Gonzaga and have not done well against Gonzaga. Arizona State actually had the best game against them and still lost by double digits.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit different. So kind of this chapters of this Gonzaga defense leads to this point. Obviously, you get Oklahoma and Spokane Arena, you blitz them. You get Creighton at home, you blitz them. Arizona State, I mean, there was anybody who watched that game kind of knows there was absolutely no flow to that game whatsoever. And it felt like every other possession, whistle, whistle, whistle. How hard is it to kind of, figure out and get your bones about you? I do think going forward, though, the one thing where we can kind of, an area we can figure out where this Zag defense is kind of even more for real is the players era. I think you're going to see so many good teams, especially offensively. I look at that game right here, first game players era against Alabama. I think you look at all that right there, the style that just the Crimson Tide play. You still have Kentucky also in that little mix, and even going forward beyond that to UCLA. I think the more that we can see the Zag defense, quote unquote, travel and kind of see what it kind of looks like away from the greater Spokane area. And yes, we'll acknowledge that the ASU effort is still very good, but it's just that everyone kind of knows the choppiness what that game was. What happens when that game isn't necessarily as choppy because of the officiating? What does that Gonzaga defense look like? And I think that's an essential question that I'd love to see answered over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and the players area, you mentioned it, like that starts next Monday, a week from today, and that is it's not quite the tip off of Feast Week. Really, like your Feast Week games, all of your big multi-team events start this coming weekend. There are a couple WCC teams, Oregon State and LMU start theirs, or not LMU, Pacific starts theirs later this week. And then we get into the players era, the Maui. We get into the Battle for Atlantis, all of whom have WCC teams involved. The Acrisure events as well. Like all of those start next week. And we'll get into those as we not as much this week. We'll talk about those next week as we're kind of like gonna really go hard on all of the Feast Week components. But as we've kind of started to think about where these teams are whatnot. I mean, we talked about it a little bit, the power rankings, like where we kind of started moving teams around. There wasn't a whole lot of movement from week 1 to week 2 from what we did, but clearly we also had got some instant reactions, some reactions about where we moved LMU. We both did it and moved them up above USF. And I know we both kind of had similar thoughts about this one, and just kind of like your read on, obviously it's early and there's not a whole lot of data, and we expect a lot of USF, but LMU jumping them at the moment, and just kind of like your thinking behind moving them up there.
Yeah, and just for a little bit of context for all our listeners, so I don't get to see Zach's power rankings before he posts them, so I wasn't sure if he actually did the same move that I did in putting LMU above USF. So that, a nice startling surprise to see last night when he posted it on social media. To go into our justification behind it, and I think to start with, I'm going to go with some of the perspectives that we're hearing from USF. How can you put LMU above them right now? They're 5-0, but they haven't played anybody. And I think the thing that I'm really going to lead with in terms of my own personal justification, and Zach will have his, is the burden of expectation. We have high expectations for USF. Chris Gerlison has high expectations for USF. Right now, the Dons are not meeting them. They've only dropped one game to Memphis, but anybody who's seen some of these other games that they've faced, Bradley, Portland State, it's just not as clean and crisp as it needs to be. Bradley, it took some heroics from Ryan Beasley. They need more secondary ball handling. That's becoming a very big alarm for the Dons, so considering what happened at Memphis. Is David Fuchs going to enter the starting lineup soon? Because they have not gotten anything from Guillermo Diaz-Graham or Barry Wong so far on this young season. And then you look at the Portland State game. They gave up 50 points in the second half. For what we think USF can be and what they should be, because we believe that this can be a tournament team, they have to get themselves in gear, because right now they have not certainly done so. I know Chris Gerlison knows that they haven't done so to this point in the season. And conversely, we were both a little bit lower on LMU this year compared to years past. I know myself, I was probably one of the lowest out there, and they're proving me wrong right now. And it's not necessarily of what do we think you're going to do in March. And that's part of the other deal in terms of seeing USF. And despite those expectations, like, what are you doing for me right now? Through 2 weeks in the season, LMU is taking care of business the way they have to. USF, there's still quite a bit to be desired along that front. And that's for me why I have LMU over USF for the moment. I don't think it'll last for that much longer, but I do think in terms of what have you shown me and what have you done for me, I think LMU has earned the right to do so.
Yeah, and I think there's even, you mentioned the expectations that we have for USF, and of course we have those expectations. And I think about the defense, I think, has been maybe one of the more concerning things to me, is because it doesn't feel like this has been a USF defense like we have seen years past, at least not early on. There's still clearly some room for improvement. I think they're still feeling each other out, and I think like that was maybe something we maybe overlooked a little bit in the preseason, was that this group still needed time to gel. There's still a lot of new pieces on this team. You're looking about Mookie Cook, you're looking about David Fuchs, you think about Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Like, there was a lot, even though they had a core of guys who had been there and know what's what, they still needed to figure some things out. And they've had to do it on the fly, a lot like every other team in the country. But there was, one of the things I kind of noted, it was like, you gave up 50 points in a half to Portland State. Like, that's inexcusable to me. Like, that's for a team that is a mid-tier at best Big Sky team, Portland State, like, no disrespect to the Vikings, but that is not a team at home that you should be giving up 50 points and a half to in any case. And we saw the bad against Memphis in that first half. We've seen some big valleys for this Dons team, and I think that's a bit concerning, thinking about what they're doing early on in the non-conference. Of course, they're going to get more opportunities to fix that. They have Minnesota this coming Friday at the Sanford Pentagon, so that's going to be a big one for the Dons. But because of that, and because LMU has just handled their business, they've taken care of what they needed to do at this moment, LMU gets credit right now. And do I think that we're going to level this thing out and the Dons are going to end up leapfrogging LMU later on? Of course I do. I think that's going to happen at some point. It may happen in the next week. It might happen 2 weeks from now. Who knows? But I do think that this is a testament to what LMU has done, in addition to just the kind of okay play we've seen from USF to this point.
And
The other difference that we both had is going to be further down in the rankings, and it's where we have Washington State and where we still have San Diego, because these are the two teams that are like Washington State at least picked up a win. They got into the win column against against St. Thomas, but then the game against Washington, not so much.
Yeah, Washington State, they're really a hard puzzle to crack right now. And then I'm gonna loop it back to USF at the end of this answer. Washington State, like they just need more from the guards. Like I am really struggling to figure out whether Washington State has enough talent on the perimeter to sustain the David Riley system. And I think right now you're seeing it kind of affect both ends of the floor. So on defense, they aren't getting enough stops, and offensively, I don't know that they're getting enough meaningful and consistent creation. And I think that's the big thing that you kind of notice against what eventually became Washington. And you think about the other losses through two games where they didn't lead it for a single second. Washington State, I'm just not sure of what this team's identity is at this point in time. And I think you're not necessarily running out of time to do so, but it's definitely time to, get in gear and try and see some people and see the team as a whole turn the corner. And I know to me, them and USD are kind of interchangeable right now when it comes to the power rankings. I don't necessarily feel strongly one way or the other in terms of that. Toreros did recover for a win against Idaho after losing that game at home to Idaho State. So, they did recover well. Obviously, USD, we're expecting more from them, I would say, at this point in time, despite the record that they have. I do think there's a little bit more that the Toreros need to be desired. But to just go back and close the book on USF, I think we need to. The reason why that power ranking kind of fell as it did is because Memphis then lost at home to a UNLV team that is not good. UNLV lost at home to what is now probably a good UT Martin team. And then I don't even remember the other bye game that they lost. But Memphis got road raced by Josh Pastner and UNLV, and that affects USF. And that was a domino effect of that. We need to see more from the Dons, and then I need to see more personally from Tyrone Riley. Give me a little bit more alpha takeover ability in you. I think that's the one thing we've been missing right now. He's been there, but I'm not sure that I've felt the force that is Tyrone Riley.
I mean, looking at Memphis' schedule, you mentioned like falling flat against UNLV. It's not going to get any easier for them. They have Purdue next, and then they're going to face either Texas Tech or Wake Forest. So likely Wake Forest in that matchup. Then they finally get back home. They'll face Southern Illinois. That might be the next best opportunity for a win for Memphis. It's snowballing on the Tigers a little bit. And of course, then that reflects on what we saw from the Dons, because that was a game almost like last year, a game they should have had.
Yep.
And one that got away from them. They were able to recover, got a win against Portland State, got a win against Bradley, but that's a Dons team that needs to they need to show something in the next few games. Like, they are going to have Minnesota up next. And of course, that's a big one, but it's not the only one coming up where we're going to need USF to really kind of step it up and prove that they kind of belong in this conversation. Colorado in the Acrisure, and then they'll have Nevada or Washington in the second game of that one. They have still Mississippi State in that first week of December. Plenty of opportunities, but it does feel like they need to get right fast before they start to see these other teams in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, fully in agreement on that. I think at least for them and a lot of other people at the top of the conference right now, the theme that comes to mind is runway. They do have runway to absolutely improve, runway for opportunity in terms of building that resume. But you said it yourself. They just, quite frankly, need to be better. And that's the reason why we're so hard on them, is because we know they can be better. We've seen them be better. We know some of the guys on this USF roster who can absolutely take over these games, which is why it's so puzzling and why we're so critical of why haven't they done it yet? We know it's in there, and we know what the type of potential that this Dons team has. Can they find a way to just get it in gear? You're get in the NASCAR car and don't get in the road car right now. Find a way, get out there, go fast, and go play your game.
Now, again, we started talking a little bit about some of the games that are happening later this week. This week is a little on the thin side as far as marquee games. This is kind of it's that week before Thanksgiving. Everyone's kind of having the little bit of the soft runway before they have their tough games in their their MTEs next week. As we know, Gonzaga is going to be in the Players era. We know that St. Mary's is going to be in the battle for Atlantis. Washington State, unfortunately, considering the way they played, is in the Maui. And that is probably not going to end well for them. Santa Clara, part of the Acrisure. USF, part of the Acrisure. Pepperdine is going to be playing in that as well. You have a number of WCC teams playing in that. Sunshine Slam for LMU, Sunshine Slam for Pacific. A lot of teams doing their thing this week. We'll get to Feast Week, and there's a little bit of a taste of it at the end of this one. But at least for this week, what is one of the games you are watching for, and maybe an expectation of what you want that team to do?
Yeah, I'll go with the Civil War, obviously coming up very quickly now. And I think the big thing is, what kind of benchmark does Oregon State show us? Because they've won a bevy of close games so far. We've seen kind of the Beaver theatrics on full display in a number of different games, basically all their games to this point in the season. And obviously chief among them, the Chris Webber-esque timeout there from North Texas, and before they got shellacked at St. Mary's in the game after. But I do think it's a notable characteristic for Oregon State, at least at this point in time, is that they are finding ways to win. And I do believe they deserve credit for doing so. Now, is it against the caliber of competition you'd like it to be seen against? You could argue both ways on that, but I do think in general it's good to see Oregon State finding a way to eke these wins out and find a way to kind of continue to get the ball rolling. Because now, despite Oregon, and I haven't seen the AP polls, I'm not sure if they just got ranked or not, but Oregon was not ranked as of last week, and Oregon State, regardless of what those dynamics are, obviously Oregon's still a very renowned team under Dana Altman. Jackson Shelstad, a very good guard. Can Oregon State find a way to kind of just quote unquote punch above their weight, especially in a road game? Because we know that we know what that's been like under Wayne Tinkle, and can they find a way to can kind of, I would say marquee win for the conference if they can get it.
Oregon hovering just outside of the top 25 are receiving votes. But yeah, that one is going to be interesting. I mean, Oregon State just, again, winning by the skin of their teeth 3 separate times. They've won their 3 games by a grand total of 7 points.
That's wins. They're wins.
Wins are wins, but now they've got to go on the road, which we know has always been a challenge for Wayne Tinkle's teams. They're going to a team that has high expectations in the Ducks, a team that is, I mean, on paper, however way you want to cut it, is the favorite in this game. There's no way, shape around that one. That's a game I think it's finally going to come crashing down for the Beavers. I mean, maybe the rivalry of it keeps it close for a while, but I think the challenge for Oregon State has been that there's not really the go-to guy. I mean, right now they have one player scoring in double figures on average, and that's Josiah Lake II at 14. Everyone, like, you have Johan Munch at 9.7, Isaiah C 8.7, Des White 8.3. You have a lot of guys who are still trying to figure their way through the Oregon State system and how they're going to fit into this offense. But I don't know. Like, I'm growing more and more weary of Oregon State because of the way they've had to win these few games, because it's not like they're facing like great competition. I mean, again, if you look one for one, an opponent that a WCC team also saw this past week, North Texas they barely beat North Texas by 2, and then St. Mary's goes out and just clobbers them by 30. That's it. 2 nights later. And I think that's a sign of like, well, I just played the same team a couple different nights, and there's wildly different results from a team we know is going to be at the top of the league versus a team that's supposed to be somewhere in the middle of the league. Like, that is a stark difference between what the Beavers have been able to do so far and what the Gales have done. A Gales team which they haven't played up to their ability, I don't think, either, which is a horrifying fact for anybody else in the conference, that this is a St. Mary's team still figuring it out, and they've been blowing teams out by 25 or more every night.
I do think, obviously, we're a credit to the Gales for blowing the brakes off of North Texas to start with. I do think there is some credence to the idea that North Texas is probably kind of shell-shocked at what happens at the end of the Oregon State game, and you have a quick turnaround against Moraga. I think that's St. Mary's is one of the toughest teams to get kind of acclimated for on such a quick turnaround, and then when you add the way that North Texas lost to Oregon State, I do think that kind of lends some I guess, a look into why the disparity was so big along that front, but still full credit to the Gales, regardless, for taking care of their business as they're supposed to. I think for Oregon State, more than anything, is I do want to see if there could be a Des White breakout game sometime soon. I know that was a big time transfer that Wayne Tinkle was very proud to get, and I think that he will be a very good player for Oregon State this year. I just think we haven't necessarily seen the full ability on the offensive end of the floor, especially in terms of his shooting. I've been looking at him to see if he can have a big game against Oregon. And I think when you look at going forward, I think Oregon State can be a very capable team. And I think it's just another thing is, can they get their consistency together? That's always been the hallmark for why Wayne Tinkle teams haven't necessarily gotten all the way to the top and all the way into consistent contention for conference championships. So Oregon State, for now, celebrate it as it is. I do think, while acknowledging the fact that they are winning by the skin of their teeth, we are also acknowledging in the same vein that LMU is doing what they're doing and taking care of business. So I think it can't be too far off and too different to do the same with Oregon State.
All right. Well, one of the other teams that is also playing well as of right now is the Pacific Tigers, and that's the game I'm going to look at. Is them later in the week taking on Florida Atlantic at Florida Atlantic. This is 3-1 versus 2-1. The Tigers really are just a missed floater away from being 4-0. They almost got that game at Nevada, and this Pacific team, I think, they're starting to look better on the offensive end, and I think that's something that they clearly needed to improve upon from last year. Through 4 games, are shooting 48% from the field, 3-point shooting 35%, much better from what we saw last season. The freshman Jayon Pitt, the 4-star recruit that came in, he had 16 points in 22 minutes in the Fullerton game, and this is so I'm liking where Pacific is right now. Florida Atlantic, I think this is a good opportunity for the Tigers. This isn't your Final Four quality Florida Atlantic team that we're talking about. So this is a chance where Pacific can maybe make some noise, get a little bit of momentum before they head into their tournament next week, because they have Stony Brook and then Bethune-Cookman or Jacksonville. Now, again, I think they should just probably kind of sweep through their MTE next week. So this Florida Atlantic game does mean a lot. I think, like, the fact that they were so close in the Nevada game, that they were knocking on that door, gave them at least a bit of a taste of what that environment is going to be like away from the Spanos Center, and take that into a Florida Atlantic in what is going to be leading into a holiday weekend. So totally different environment for the Tigers, but I think that this is a game that I'm looking to see if Elias Ralph can really step in and be the guy, how much TJ Wainwright is going to be part of that. He's been actually really good the last couple weeks, and we're starting to see a little bit more from Isaac Jack and Casey Mbekwe on the front line, because even actually on the rebounding front, this has been a good rebounding team. 39.5. They're about a +3 on the rebounding front. Elias Ralph actually was 7.8 rebounds a game. So he's doing it on both ends of the floor. So I'm looking at this Tiger team, looking at this Florida Atlantic game as one that, if they can pull this one off, they look at those 2 next week, and I think that's very, very doable for them, that by Thanksgiving, you could be looking at a 6-1 Pacific team.
And for me, at least, even with that loss to Nevada, over the course of these first 2 games, I like the character that kind of Pacific's building and the way they kind of have formulated the identity for this team. And at certain points last season, it's just like, Pacific didn't really have the firepower to compete. And I think this year, a very noticeable improvement that they can. And while they didn't get the result they wanted against Nevada, I do think that's part of the process and learning how to win. And when you continue to go on the road and you beat a Fullerton team who's obviously they're not going to be very good this year, but I do think it's important to go out and take care of business the way Pacific did. I think that also matters in the same vein. Now, can you do it again? Because you beat FAU, and like you mentioned, FAU is not the FAU of the Dusty May run. That's still a notable brand name over the course of the last few years in college basketball. And I think if Pacific can get over the hump there, I think more than anything, it adds a boatload of confidence for the Tigers that they can get this done, that they can run through that empty, and that they can get into the mid-pack of the WCC, because we're both in agreement that Pacific will be, I would say, leaps and bounds better compared to last year. And a win against Florida Atlantic, I think, would do numbers for that type of narrative. And I'm intrigued to see if they can do it. Lots of different guys who can contribute. I really want to see if Pitt can continue to do it again, especially on the road.
Not to get too far ahead of myself, but maybe I'll just go ahead and do it with Pacific. Again, if they can get this Florida Atlantic game, I think they should be able to handle their business in the MTE. They're hosting Sacramento State next Saturday. That's a game that would be pretty entertaining. Mikey Williams coming down to Stockton for that one. But their schedule, I mean, even after that is kind of favorable. Like they're going to be at Air Force, and Air Force isn't any good. Then probably the next big test is they head over to Berkeley and they'll take on Cal. So this could be a Pacific team. Again, not gonna get too far out in front of the skis here, but this could be a team that is going to cause some problem for the Golden Bears in a couple of weeks if the Tigers play to who we think they can be over the next 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, and I think when you look at conversely, because I watch a lot of Cal as well, Cal is a gettable team on the defensive end of the floor. So Pacific, I think when you look at their consistency on the offensive end of the floor, the more that can kind of build upon itself, the more they can do well and cause some chaos over in Berkeley. Unless we forget 2 years ago when Pacific pretty much had the season to forget, culminating in that WCC tournament game against Pepperdine, they beat Cal that year. All right, let's as much as some people may want to forget that did happen. So credit to Pacific for doing that. And I think, like you mentioned, and the general theme around a lot of these programs so far in the WCC this year is opportunity. Pacific has immense opportunity to go out and kind of not necessarily rewrite their story, so to speak, but kind of in the vein of what Portland told us, prove themselves right as opposed to proving everyone else wrong, because Dave Smart was bullish on his team and he told us as much at WCC Media Day. And I think he's justified in doing so. And I think so far the results have been a net positive, I think, without a shadow of a doubt.
Now, we're talking about opportunity. This Santa Clara team is going to have a lot of opportunity coming up in the next few weeks. We're going to be talking with Santa Clara guard Christian Hammond here in just a few minutes. And just want to kind of, like we talked about it again, getting out of in front of ourselves about what if they get by Nevada? What if they get by Xavier? Now you look at the schedule, it's like, well, now the next big test, like they still have to take care of business the next few nights. They still have to take care of Idaho State, still take care of Louisiana. But then that St. Louis game is going to be a big, big matchup. And I think that's one that if we're thinking about looking at Santa Clara moving forward, that's like the next big game that we're going to have to highlight.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this upcoming weekend change, and I know there's lots of opportunity for the Broncos. You look at everything else in terms of the lead up for the Idaho State, Louisiana games you have to take care of business. And I think it goes without saying, pretty much for every single program in the conference, you can't overlook anybody. You can get beat on any given night if you don't take care of your business. And I think Santa Clara has been very purposeful so far in the few games that they've had so far this season, and they haven't really taken anybody lightly. And I expect that to continue as they head off into the Acrisure.
All right, we're happy to bring in Santa Clara guard Christian Hammond to talk about just how Santa Clara has been looking this season. Obviously, 4-0 start. Christian, you had 27 points the other night against Nevada, career high. I mean, this team just seems like it's just you guys are still kind of learning on the fly, but it seems that this team is just kind of like really picked up where it left off last year, even though there's so many new pieces on the squad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely say I think just these first couple of games shows the potential that our team does have. I think we have played really well up to this point. I think obviously there's a lot of things that we need to work on offensively and defensively. And yeah, I think just with like the new pieces that we all have, like everybody's pretty much new. Only a couple guys have experience playing real minutes for us. And I just think like the leadership from BK, Elijah, and Jake have been real big for all of us, as well as like practice, like me and Buki and Alan, like we've been in this program. So we kind of know like the standard and what is expected of us. So, and I definitely think like the biggest part about our success right now is just like our culture. And I think we're all each other's biggest fan. Like we all want to see each other win. Like we all want to see Buki do well. We want to see Elijah do what he does. We want Sash to have another game like that against how he played against McNeese. Like we all cheer each other on. So yeah,
I think it's cool to kind of shed a light into some of that, and I kind of seen it in some of the creative shots in the locker room post game. You know, Jake shouting out Buki for his efforts against Nevada. Where do you feel like that kind of has stemmed from over the course of time? Obviously, with new guys, it's easy for culture to get lost in this day and age of college athletics. How have all the new guys kind of bought into that, and how have you, Jake, BK, among others, kind of showcased what it kind of means to be a Bronco, not only this year, but over the course of these last few?
Yeah, I think all the coaches have done a great job with making this like a big cornerstone of our program. And we know that they trust and rely on the guys that have been here to um, make that the standard. And us just making it the standard for how we act and interact with each other every day. It leaves the new guys like no choice but to uh, start, keeping up with the standard, or else like it's obvious when you have a group of guys that are for each other and then one guy's an outlier and not, cheering each other on or not supporting the way, everyone else is. So I think us just leading by example has helped the new guys buy in, as well as like people like you guys haven't seen yet. Obviously, Gary, he's been hurt, but he is the ultimate team guy. I've never had a teammate that has been more supportive and more enthusiastic as he is. So I think like everyone's background is just everyone just fits, like it all fits in.
Yeah, BK and Jake at Media Day shed light on some of Garrick's personality. They even we asked who's the class clown. We asked every team who's the class clown of every team, and they mentioned Garrick and kind of the personality that he brings to the table. I do kind of want to peel back the curtain to your personal timeline because it's a little bit different compared to some other people in this league. You had a good end to your freshman season. You have a good WCC tournament game against St. Mary's, and then you redshirt last year. How did that timeline kind of take shape for you, and what ultimately were some of those big benefits that you believe have kind of paid off here at the start of this season?
Yeah, thinking back, feels like a long time ago, but felt I remember in the moment it was a little bit difficult. I understood the reason why. Uh, we had a very talented team last year with a very old, group of guys with Adama, Tyree, Carlos Stewart, all those guys. So it's understandable, like me just doing my part, and I know like if I, you know, ended up deciding to take the redshirt year, uh they told me that it was going to benefit me, and it was just up to me if I was going to make it worth it or not. And every day I just went in the weight room, lifted, developed my game, my IQ. And I say the biggest part that I see like reflecting now is my IQ. I think recognizing cuts, like just like the uh being comfortable like with the ball and being comfortable in like certain situations. That redshirt year definitely helped me. Just being able to handle the ball more against uh the starters, I guess, 'cause you do scout team and things like that. So definitely the IQ and then strength, being able to play physical and take hits and be able to endure for uh 28, 30 minutes a night.
Was like thinking about that through that red shirt year, you talked about like going and being able to learn a little bit more and help your IQ on your basketball IQ on those cuts and just going through the practices. What were maybe like some of like the what some of that additional like training that you did go through, or was it just like through the practices? Was who was kind of like helping you along to try to kind of help your game out? And how did when you kind of have to be the cheerleader on the sideline a little bit during those games, like how did that kind of also start to develop maybe some of that leadership that you could take into this season?
hmm I'd say it was a collective like effort from everybody trying to help me. I think all the coaches did a good job in being them, like they're just being themselves, and they all helped me in different ways. Like Coach Garson, he would always try to bring a smile to my face. Usually, I'd work out with Coach Madry, and he really helped me. I still work out with him now all the time. He really helps me develop my game and really get game reps in. I think that was the most important thing, was getting game reps, even when I'm not playing. And Coach Sendek just and Coach Jackson teaching me like the mindset of like treat every practice like it's your game. And I think just having that mindset helps me take everything more serious, which I think leads to me being able to, perform this year and come in more ready than I would have last year. And then as far as me having to cheer people on, I think it just taught me how to be a better teammate, because I think it's easy to get um, in your own head and to focus on yourself. But when you take the spotlight off of yourself and you just have the opportunity not to worry about your performance or your stats or what you have going on, and just be able to praise other people and try to help other people as much as you can. I think when you do that for so long, it just becomes a habit. So I think once it became a habit, I think it really did help me become a leader for our team this year.
Christian, obviously the part of the deal in this coming out party for a lot of the guys is you mentioned Buki. I think I'll give a shout to Alan Graves and kind of what have you kind of noticed kind of from the trio? Because you guys are you're newer to a lot of the people who are getting used to watching Santa Clara basketball and West Coast Conference basketball. What from the last year and kind of the battles you guys had against Carlos Stewart and Cameron Tong and Christoph Tilley, how did those kind of moments formulate the ability for you guys to grow and eventually take advantage of the opportunities this year?
I definitely just think playing against talented guys like that every day, it teaches you, I see, like perseverance. You got to be confident. When you're gonna go play against Tilly in the post or, out on the perimeter, you have to be confident that you're able to guard him and confident you're able to score. So I definitely think playing against people like that definitely just built confidence. And also, apart from like what we did, they were really good to us and instilling the confidence in us that we can do it and we're talented. We can do all these things. And I just remember every day in practice, we'd always just try to come in with the right mindset of, yeah, they're older, but like they're good. We're good too. We're at the same spot. Like we can compete with these guys. And I definitely think they just did a good job pushing us every single day.
And in addition to that, I think part of the deal is the chemistry you guys have to build, from the guard to the forwards position. How has that kind of taken shape over the course of time? Because so far this season, you guys are playing an unselfish brand of basketball. Different guys are scoring at different outputs pretty much every single game. How did that kind of take shape?
Definitely, I just think off the court. I mean, for example, like me and Alan are really close. Like we're like best friends, and same with Buki. Me and Buki are best friends too. So we've known each other for a long time. And we've been in the me and Bookie been in the program for 3 years, so we've been able to build that chemistry with one another for a little bit. But with all of us, with everybody, I think it really comes down to just off the court and how tight knit you can be off the court. Like we do everything together. We like each other. There's no little cliques or little groups. We all will sit with each other, talk to each other, do team activities, go watch games, go do all that stuff. And I just think those little small moments, they start to add up and they build their relationship to where like when you're on the court and times get hard or someone misses a pass, it's not you coming directly at them in a negative way, but you're coming at them to help them. Because I think once you build that relationship of, trust and like, we all love each other, that I definitely think it helps us to be better.
You talk about that connectivity, and the one thing I think on the court that we've started to see a little bit more is that defensively, this team does look a lot better than what it did a year ago. And maybe it's a little bit that the pieces kind of a little bit more conducive to playing a better brand of basketball. But kind of talk a little bit about the emphasis there has been on the defensive end during the offseason and then what we've been able to see so far this year.
Yeah, definitely offseason defense was a big point of emphasis for us because we have the athletes, we have the length. Just comes down to effort, determination, and mindset. And I think it was just a big thing for us to just really dig in every possession on defense. I know Nevada, we didn't play the brand of defense that is up to our standard, which we're gonna get back on that for sure next game. But yeah, that was a really big part of who we are going to be. Like it was like we wanted that to be our identity this year of being tough, picking up, getting 50-50 balls, rebounding, running, because I just think our defense really leads and helps us going into our offense, which, if we create turnovers, then we're able to run and play that fast kind of basketball that we want to play.
I think part of the deal going forward is, and especially you hear this from coaches, is you want to be getting towards your best basketball towards March, and obviously we're a long way away from that. But starting with this to this point in the season, how close do you feel like you guys are to playing your best basketball, and what more do you want to see in terms of growth, not only from yourself but from the squad?
Personally, I honestly don't think that we're close to playing our best brand of basketball. I mean, Cherry, Darling, he's a great player. Sash, great player. Like we have a whole bunch of guys. I'm just saying those two specific because I know personally how talented they are and how good they are. And I just think, like I think we've all been playing well. I just think there's little strides and little, building blocks that we need to hit before we get to that point of, playing perfect basketball in our eyes, which is like, say like small cuts, making the right reads, um, ball pressure, active hands, like just like those small things. People do that all the time. I definitely think we're a ways away, but we have really talented guys, like I said. Um, and yeah, I just think growth uh from my perspective, I just wanna just be able to handle situations with more maturity. And obviously we really haven't had like a super close game down the stretch yet, like a one possession game. So definitely just being able to handle those games and those situations with maturity, just continue to make the right reads, and really just be a good teammate to one another. 'Cause I think that's what it comes down to. The more we're connected, I think the better chance we have to win games.
We did this at media day, and kind of curious if it's changed at all. Of like now after the wins you guys have had, who's been in charge of the music after during post game? I'm kind of curious who's been your DJ.
Yeah, everyone's kind of they've thrown out different names. We've heard Tadro, especially, but there were some polarizing opinions on Tadro's music. So let it fly.
Yeah, Taja, I don't know about his music. I don't know about his music. But yeah, typically it's really whoever gets in there first, honestly, I think. But usually it's either me or Buki that usually gets the aux whenever we're in the weight room, but post game, guys are usually spread out and either talking and doing stuff, but usually I know for a fact that I always go in there and get the music going first after the game. So
What are you playing?
NBA Youngboy. That's my favorite artist, and that's a lot of our favorite artists on the team. So
Fair enough. And I'm obligated to ask because obviously you talk about watching games with guys like Alan Graves, and obviously the West Coast Conference, no football teams aside from USD, but that doesn't really even count at this point. You've mentioned you're an Alabama football fan. Are you Alan, were you guys locked in watching Alabama LSU a few weeks ago? And what was that all about? If you had the time, of course.
nah, we were watching it. He's actually a Texas fan.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, he's a Texas fan. So either way though, we always keep up with, the games, and we always hope each other's team is losing. And yeah, just being roommates last year, I know specifically, I'll tell y'all this. We were watching the Alabama Georgia game. Big game. Alabama got up really, I think it was about like 21, and then Georgia came back, and then Marlon Williams had a crazy catch. We was in the room. We were watching the game. It was crazy. So yeah.
All right. We'll let you get out of here. Thanks a lot, Christian, for hopping on. Santa Clara 4-0 to start the early season, and Christian Hammond has been a big part of the early success. So, Christian, thanks a lot for hopping on, and we will catch up as the season goes along.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Wanted to thank Christian one more time for being able to hop on and talk a little bit about Santa Clara's early season success. This team is 4-0. They are looking at probably set up to be 6-0, assuming they handle their business before they get to the Acrisure, where they will face Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the St. Louis Billikens. This is a big 2 weeks for Santa Clara, and if they can somehow get by this in relatively good shape, and if they drop the game to St. Louis, it's not the end of the world. But if they can split at Acrisure, they win the next two. We talked about it, going to New Mexico, something like 9-1. You got to feel, or not 9-1. I think it's or maybe it was 9-1. Like, you got to feel really good by the time you get to New Mexico if you only have one loss on your collar.
100%. And I think the fact that New Mexico game is only on the Mountain West Network, that is complete and utter robbery for college basketball fans around the country. But in general, yes, I think the main theme of what Santa Clara is, and what I've noticed, going from a student and then obviously to a media member / fan, is it's never about the peaks with Santa Clara. It's about, can you avoid the flat tires? And it goes without saying, these next two games, got to win them. And I'm actually in agreement in terms of what you're assessing with the Acrisure. I think a split is fine. It's obviously, everyone, you want to win every single game, but it won't be signal of doom, red alarms, 5-alarm fires if Santa Clara doesn't go 2-0 and win the Acrisure, because in years past with the different MTs that the Broncos have gone at over the years, they played in SoCal when they beat up TCU a few years ago. Then they play in the Bahamas, and then they beat up TCU again in the Acrisure. They haven't gone 2-0 in those MTs, but it's not the end of the world that they haven't. So with Santa Clara, it's more about consistency. And I do think compared to when I was like assessing them a few months ago compared to now, they're a more consistent group than I've expected them to be, and it's a good job for them in executing and doing so. And I do like the fact that Christian Hammond mentioned, well, how do I handle a close game, a one possession game? And we haven't seen it yet from Santa Clara, but I'm glad that he kind of acknowledged that in the sense of, yeah, the Broncos they're 4-0, but they're not satisfied because they know in certain respects they still need to find out who they are.
Yeah, you need to have one of those close games. You don't want to intentionally get into one of those close games, but you do need that experience when that opportunity comes. And to Santa Clara's credit, they haven't needed to be in that situation. But I do expect that situation is probably coming pretty soon in the next few weeks. All right, we're going to get out of here. Before we do that, be sure to hit the subscribe button on the podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow along on social media at unofficial WCC pod. That is Thomas. I am Zach. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you later.